Now, Monaco is a track in F123 that many dislike, and I can firmly say that I'm part of that group. It's a super tight and twisty circuit, and the walls are always there, ready to eat up anyone who makes a mistake. However, on the brighter side, in F123, Monaco is actually much easier to drive than it was in previous years, thanks to the refinements that have been made to the driving physics. And when the car's easier to drive, the walls and the skinny track suddenly aren't as much of an issue. So I am approaching this Monaco setup with a lot more enthusiasm than I have done in previous years. Now, I won't go as far as saying I actually like this track, but I'm going to try and have as much fun as I can. While the driving physics have been improved a lot, the aerodynamic setup still needs to follow our normal approach for Monaco. Set the front wing aero to its maximum value at 50 and the rear wing close to maximum at 48. This track requires the most amount of downforce possible, and that starts with the aero setup. Now, the reason I haven't set the rear wing to 50 is to actually allow some opportunity of overtaking, which is actually possible this year. For the transmission, we need to simply make the car as easy to drive as possible, and that means setting the on-throttle differential to 50% and the off-throttle diff to 53%. This approach makes traction as easy as possible to come by, making the car easier to drive at slower speeds. Now, we don't need to worry about straight line speed too much, and that's reflected in our geometry setup. You can see we're running the usual camber setup of far right for both front and rear, but we also have high toe settings as well. This will increase both responsiveness and stability at the expense of straight line performance. But that's a trade-off that we can happily make around Monaco. For the suspension, you ideally want it pretty soft so it can handle the bumps and curves that are typical of this tight and twisty street circuit. Don't soften everything too far though, otherwise your car will start to feel a bit like jelly and will simply be too slow. Go for 12 and 7 on the suspension setup and 7 and 2 for the anti-roll bars. Then raise the ride height to cope with the undulations around Monaco and opt for 36 and 42. Now, I did contemplate lowering the brake pressure around Monaco, as there are a few places where lockups are pretty common. However, I found it more efficient keeping the brake pressure at 100% and simply modulating the brake input that I apply. This is most important on the approach to turn 18, where lockups are extremely common. Then go ahead and set your brake bias to 54%. Tyre temperatures can really be an issue around Monaco, purely because of the heavy traction requirements when accelerating out of slow speed corners. For this reason, lower all pressures to 22.2 at the front and just 20 psi at the rear. And that will complete our Monaco car setup for F123. Now, this track isn't the most enjoyable to drive personally, although when you do get into a flow it's much better. So a consistent and easy to drive car, like the one that this car setup gives, is the perfect approach for such a tricky circuit. Now let me know in the comments below if you like this car setup and if you like this track. I'd be intrigued to know. Also, make sure you're subscribed to our channel to be notified when I drop new F123 setup videos, which is every single day currently. But for now, enjoy this setup and enjoy the track as much as you can, and I will see you on track.